attended council hearings in person. You tuned into our televised proceedings on Channel 13. Now, you have the chance to listen to us on the radio as we demystify our work and the people who do it. This is not a council hearing. This is Hearing the Council with your host, Josh Gibson.
Thank you, deep voice person with a funky backbeat. Indeed, this is not a council hearing. This is Hearing the Council. You can't have a government without a council, so you can't have a government radio station without a council show. This is it. I'm Josh Gibson, Director of Communications for the Council. You may also know me as the Council's voice on social media at Council of DC. Today, we are here with our guest, Ward 5's Councilmember Zachary Parker, who we are thrilled to have back. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem at all. And today we're going to look at a few different topics. We're going to start off with a few pieces of legislation that you introduced this session. Let's kick it off with, well, first of all, I wanted to wish you a happy belated birthday. I understand you had a birthday just a couple days ago, correct?
Yes. Pisces season coming through strong. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Go Team Fish. So I literally didn't plan this transition, but it works out perfectly. The first bill we're going to talk about is the Water is Life bill.
Yes.
Because water is, joking aside, key to Pisces and to just humans.
That is so true.
Tell me about that bill.
Well, as you know, Water is Life is DC Water's motto, and it is the name of the legislation, which aims to do two broad things. One, it aims to make it easier for residents to sign up for and take advantage of DC Water's repayment programs. I have received countless communications from residents who are desperate, facing water shutoffs, who have barriers to signing up for one of the repayment programs, either because the down payment is too much and or they've missed the cutoff and or they haven't received word back from DC Water. And this bill aims to make it easier and more streamlined for residents to take advantage of one of the several repayment programs that DC Water provides. It also aims to eliminate water shutoffs at residential properties. And that's significant because we know that water shutoffs are harmful, they are traumatic, and they put residents in harm's way, especially those that may have young kids and or health needs or homes where there may be someone elderly living in the house. DC Water has even gone as far as saying it is more cost effective to keep a person's water on versus shutting it off and trying to turn it back on. And so again, while reducing the trauma that water shutoffs cause, are trying to make it easier for people to take advantage of the repayment program, because we know people want to pay their bills, we know people will pay their bills, but we need to just remove barriers from people doing so. And the last thing I will say is another jurisdiction in Chicago explored a water shutoff ban. And what we found through the research is that it has not significantly impacted their water utility. And so for those that may be wondering the financial impact that this type of policy might have for DC Water, we do not believe that it would have a significant one.
And I have to admit, as I was prepping for this interview and reading about your bill, I had always assumed that water shutoff was on the list of other banned or limited utility shutoffs. I know you can't shut off electricity during the winter. You can't shut off heat during the winter, that kind of thing. Gas during the winter. I'm stunned that you can shut off folks' water.
That's exactly right. And we know the people that are often facing water shutoffs are disproportionately Black and brown, lower income residents in the district. And yes, people are having their water shut off every day. In fact, I got a very traumatic call last year from a family, a mom who was desperate. She had 4 children in the house, and she was one day away from having her water shut off. Fortunately, we were able to work something out with DC Water to avoid that water shut off. But it should not take you calling into your council office or council member's office to stave off water shut off. I'll give you one more example. We had a Brooklyn area resident who had a water leak because of their toilet that had gone on for some time, and they didn't know about it. DC Water did not alert them of the exponential use of water. And when they got the bill, they had owed many thousands of dollars that they just simply could not afford to pay. Again, that is just another example. We had another resident who wanted to pay and put forth a good forth payment, but because their water had already been shut off, they weren't eligible for the repayment program. And so you see both sides of the trauma that water shutoffs cause, but also the barriers that exist for people that are wanting to take advantage of the repayment program.
And do you have any clue why water is not included with other bans on utility shutoffs? I mean, like you say, water is life. I mean, why is that even permitted if other utilities are not permitted to be shut off?
I will let DC Water speak to that, but I would just say we are hoping that this bill will have a hearing in the T&E committee, of which I'm a member. And it is worth noting at our recent oversight hearing with DC Water, they are seeing record profits where they are paying millions of dollars in bonuses and profits to its leadership, where they were not able to provide a bottom line number of how many shutoffs there were, how many people had written into the utility for assistance. And so I'm not here to badmouth DC Water, but I am here to say that there is more that the utility can do and should be doing to stave off the traumatic impact that a water shutoff has on so many DC residents. And that's what this bill aims to do.
And I heard what you said, that in Chicago, they had not seen a strong fiscal impact, but I don't know enough about DC Water's budget status because they're quasi-independent. But would the fiscal impact of your bill be if DC Water saw less water bill payment? Would that directly hit our bottom line, or would it hit just their bottom line?
It would, well, that's a good question. We would believe that they would make up those costs in other ways, that it would not hit the district's bottom line, if that's what you're getting at. But that also assumes that people don't want to pay their bill. What we know is that people want to pay their bill. We have other jurisdictions that have moved in this direction. It's worth noting that this would preclude only water shutoffs at residential properties. There's also an ability to maintain water shutoffs at commercial properties. And to DC Water's own admission, it is more costly to cut someone's water off and then back on than helping them find a way to pay their bill. So we are hoping that this can go into effect. There are needed changes at DC Water. And I'll leave you with this statistic, that out of the nearly 200,000 residents that are utilizing DC Water on a regular, less than 20% of qualified individuals are utilizing a repayment program. That shows you that there is a breakdown somewhere in the communication, the efficiency of the program, and the implementation of it, so that so many people that could qualify that are facing record high bills at a time when we know inflation is high and there are other cost pressures are not using it. So again, we see this bill as a way of providing a lifeline to many district residents, and I'm hoping that it will pass and go into effect.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, it seems like, and by Washington, D.C. Water's own admission, it seems like it's cutting off your nose to spite your face. If it costs more to cut off someone's water and turn it back on.
That's right. And there are some that would say, well, this would mean no one would pay their bill. This would not tie DC Water's hands completely. There would be other accountability means that the utility could explore to incentivize people paying their bill. They could still file a lien against someone's property. They could still pursue an individual in court. There are other mechanisms to secure payment without having someone go through the trauma of having their water shut off. And so for those that may be thinking, well, this would mean no one would pay, you still have an incentive to pay your water bill.
And do you have a sense of the prospects for a hearing this council period?
I think they're really high. I'm a member of the Tea and Heat Committee. I've talked to Chairperson Allen about this. As you know, there have been some unfortunate changes on the Tea and Heat Committee staff, given the pass of Mr. Lukowski. And, you know, I send my condolences to his family. He was a great director of the committee. And so we are still trying to figure out what the schedule for the year might look like. But I believe there's a high probability that we will fit a hearing in this year and hopefully pass this bill.
Yeah, I mean, the term common sense legislation is overused, but this certainly seems to merit that.
Thank
tag.
you. I think so.
Okay, so let's move on to another piece of legislation. The Pay Our Youth a Fair Wage Act, relating, you know, summer youth employment season is coming up.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about what the goal of this bill is.
Yeah, we know the Marionberry Youth Leadership Program, as it is now often dubbed, is a highly successful program, and it has been for decades. Many people in the district would say they got their first job because of this program. And put quite frankly and simply, the young people participating in that program are not being paid a fair wage. They're not being paid enough. And so what this bill would do would gradually increase the pay for some of the older participants. And for individuals 16 and older, it would bring the pay to the minimum wage, which is around now $17. And it would set that as the benchmark for payment moving forward. For those a bit younger, it would move the pay from about $6 to $10. And so this is an acknowledgement that the success of this program has made it very competitive. And we want to continue it, but we also need to pay our young people a fair wage. And I'll tell you why. We know as the district is continuing to combat violence and crime, that we need to provide alternatives for our young people to do more productive and positive things. If the prospects of me engaging in the Marionberry Youth Leadership Program is only to get $6 an hour, that may be less attractive than going down the wrong path and perhaps selling drugs and or doing something else that might put me in harm's way and or allow me to engage with the criminal justice system. I'm not saying that those avenues are the right things or that we should excuse them. I am saying, though, that we know economic opportunity is directly connected to one's likelihood of getting involved in the wrong behaviors. More importantly, we know the cost of living has increased in the district, and inflation is still at an all-time high. And so with those matters, we think it's important that we bring our young people's pay in alignment with the minimum wage and pay a fair wage.
And it seemed like there, if I'm understanding correctly, there's currently kind of a 3-tier wage system. There's the very young, there's a big middle chunk, and then there's the youth employment program goes from 14 to 24. There's a, you know, for the higher end, for the sort of true adults in the group, they already have the highest pay. But I think what you're proposing is flattening it to kind of a 2-tier structure.
The highest pay would bring the pay to the minimum wage. So although they do have the highest pay now, it is still not meeting the minimum wage. And that second chunk, as you put it, it would be bringing them up to $10 an hour. This is in recognition that, as I mentioned, we need to pay our young people a fair wage, make this program even more competitive and attractive, and give young people more positive outlets to engage in their summer time. I will say, if you look at the data, and we have looked at this closely, there's a precipitous drop-off from the number of young people that start at the beginning of the summer program to the end. We think that's in part because of the pay. We would also be looking at finding ways to further subsidize this program, knowing that the hike in pay for the program might have an impact on the number of seats. So we don't want to negatively impact who has access to the program by the number of seats provided, while we are still yet trying to raise the pay. It was introduced as a permanent legislation. We had entertained the thought of doing this on an emergency basis so that it could go in effect immediately and be implemented this summer. But realizing that we would need to find additional funds, we thought it would be better to have a hearing and have it go in, should it pass, go into effect next year.
Right, because this one I feel like would have a bit more of a fiscal impact.
Yes.
Because it's that.
And it might, we had reason to believe that DOEES would absorb the cost, but it would have a direct impact on the number of seats provided. And so as to not impact the number of seats provided through the program, we, again, introduced it as permanent, and we'll look to hopefully fund it and go into effect next year.
Gotcha. And do you think you'll be able to get a hearing this year potentially?
Yes, because I co-introduced it with Councilwoman Anita Bonds, who chairs the committee that would need to hold a hearing. And so I have full confidence that she will hold that hearing and we can move it through the process expeditiously.
Right, and Councilmember Bonds served both with Marion Barry, both as a colleague on the council and as a colleague in the administration.
That's right. That's right.
So they go.
And she's been a great partner on this bill, and she too recognizes that the need to pay our young people a fair wage.
Yeah. Okay, so the third bill we wanted to talk about was the Environmental Justice Act. And this one I think is timely. There's a hearing coming up. But why don't you tell us a bit about the motivation and what the bill would accomplish?
Yeah, we have a hearing coming up. The Environmental Justice Act, as it's dubbed in short, would seek to hold government accountable to the environmental harms that many district residents face. It is no secret that Ward 5 houses the lion's share of industrial land use in the district. That is not by happen chance. In fact, it is because of what I would argue are racist policies impacting predominantly Black, lower income communities that has been allowed to stand for this long. We are looking to the comp plan to continue to push and change that. And it is simply to say that while industrial land is necessary for our city, it does not have to be congregated exclusively in one ward, much of which is Ward 5. This bill would take into effect the cumulative impact of land use and environmental impacts. And so all of that to say that as new entities, new businesses seek to locate in different areas of the city, they would need to acquire certain permitting and get special approval. And there would be a new office within DOEE that would be looking at what are the cumulative impacts of this entity, this business, this factory, what have it, in this community. Let me just go a little bit further. Let's say you have a I don't know, a tire producing plant, and you want to locate in Ivy City in Ward 5. While that plant in and of itself may not produce a significant amount of toxins and or harm, now government would have to look at the cumulative impact of what already exists in a community like Ivy City and the contribution of this new entity. And should it pass a threshold that is established by the CDC, and so that is where we are using, that is where we're looking for our standard. Should the emissions and or the contributions of this new entity pass that threshold, it would not be permitted or allowed in that environment. The goal of this legislation is, as I mentioned, to hold government accountable, to have a stake and a say in how businesses, entities, factories are locating in and around the district. And so communities like mine in Ward 5, 7, and 8 predominantly can have a fair shake in where businesses are locating as the district continues to develop.
Yeah, it sounds like from the way you've described it, like the current law is kind of like staring through a straw. Like you see the one project, and that's all you see.
That's
You jump
right.
in isolation, and you wouldn't figure out that it was the straw that broke the camel's back.
That's exactly
So
right.
your legislation is kind of looking at the whole camel.
I
And
like that expression. I might borrow it for the hearing, that the straw that broke the camel's back. I like that.
sure, as long as you credit it, then.
Yes, I will.
Oh, good.
That's exactly right. And this isn't to say that the goal is not to pit some residents against others, but it is to say that all areas of the district should bear the burden of industrial land use, just like we've said for affordable housing. And I agree with all areas of the district should bear the responsibility. I don't want to say the burden, the responsibility of affordable housing. The same is true for industrial land use, and this legislation moves us in that direction.
And do you think, is there any worry that if cumulative impact is looked at, that someone looking at locating a business like that may just choose to go outside the district entirely? Or is
I
that
don't,
preferable?
I don't think so, because there are ample opportunities that remain in the district, and DC is the best bet in the region. So I don't buy this idea that businesses will choose not to locate here. What it will mean is that communities like Ivy City and Brentwood and Ward 5 and many others across the district will have government looking at, analyzing, and measuring the cumulative impact of the environmental harms posed by buildings, entities, factories, you name it. And this would be the first of its kind and a huge win for residents across the district.
And I saw another piece of this that, again, was educated me. It would establish an environmental justice division at the Department of Energy and the Environment. And it was an eye-opener to me, in the sense that I can't imagine that didn't already exist.
It does not exist, believe it or not. And while DOEE is certainly paying attention to environmental justice concerns, this would establish an office there where that would be their sole responsibility. I have worked closely with DOEE since taking office, and we have many wins as a count. The NEP factory in Ivy City now has a permit that they otherwise probably would not have had. The Fort Myer factory and plant in Eckington now has a permit where they otherwise might not. We have air quality monitoring going forward in Brentwood and Ivy City, thanks to the partnership with DOEE. And we're continuing to work with them because we know that for years, residents in Ward 5, for no other reason being then they are located in an area where a lot of Black folk have long lived, and in some pockets, the lower income residents have called home, that certain things have been permitted. Some of that needs to be handled through legislation, which we are trying to tackle through this bill. Other aspects of it need to be tackled through the comp plan. And as the council ramps up to take on the comp plan, that is something I will be looking to talk a lot more about.
And in terms of the potential costs of the bill, is it simply bringing these new levels of analysis, or these deeper levels of analysis, to all proposed projects? Is it setting up the new division at DOE, or is there actually not a ton of costs related to it?
I would expect the cost to be modest. We are waiting for after the bill and a markup from our council budget office, but it would be standing up this new office, which we wouldn't expect there to be a 50 people or FTEs in office. And so outside of that, it would be setting the guidelines and the regulations for many of the entities that already exist, and DOEE driving the direction of saying we need to assess and measure the cumulative impact of harm posed for communities. And I think it would be a huge win, not just for Black residents, but for all residents that live in certain parts of the city. And we have the data that tell us that of the heat island effect. We have the data that tell us that there are particulates in the air in certain parts of the city versus others. We have the data that tells us that the tree canopy is eroding. In fact, in Ward 5, the tree canopy eroded more than any other area, in part because of the level of development happening in Ward 5. And so we think this legislation is necessary to counter the effects of climate change, to counter the effects of rapid development in DC, but also to keep DC residents safe.
Because is the Arboretum, is that in Ward 5?
It is.
It's bad when the tree canopy is eroding and you have the Arboretum, which is like literally the tree place.
That is right. We still have a significant tree canopy. In fact, I am excited to share we will be working with Casey's Trees and some other partners to plant many more trees throughout the ward. More to come on that. But yes, you're right. We have the Arboretum, which is a national treasure, certainly a local treasure in Ward 5. But if you think of the level of development that is happening from Providence to McMillan to Ivy City to Union Market, oftentimes that comes with the destruction and the disruption of trees and green space. And that is in large part why the tree canopy is eroding a bit in Ward 5.
And I know to anyone who's watching this, very soon after we record it, like we said, there's a hearing scheduled on Monday on this bill. But beyond that, what is your sense for the legislative prospects?
Yeah, again, everything I introduce is well researched, well investigated. I was proud to partner with Councilmember McDuffie, who was the previous Ward 5 council member, as well as Councilmember Henderson in introducing this legislation. I will be honest with you, it is a more of a technical bill, and so it uses a lot of technical language, but I am confident that once district residents truly internalize what this bill is trying to do, and once my colleagues see the excitement that residents have for this type of policy, that it will pass. And I'm calling on my colleagues to stand in solidarity with communities in Ward 5, as well as communities in Ward 7 and 8, as well as in 4 and elsewhere. I can even say in communities in Ward 6, there are many parts of the city that have been touched significantly by environmental harm. And this bill is one of many steps that we're working to take to counter that.
And of course, I mean, the first step to any bill getting passed is a hearing, and the fact that here, you know, the chair has a lot of discretion in terms of what bills do and don't get hearings. So that is
I don't know if I love that. Now, I'm still a freshman council member, but if I had my way, you know, I don't know if committee chairs should be able to call balls and strikes on which bills have hearings. I guess that's how it's done. It's always been done. That's how it's done on the federal level. But I don't know if that's the best way to do things. So just throwing my 2 cents out there.
Yes, well, we'll ask you in another 9.5 months.
Yes.
You know, once you're committee chair.
Yes.
But yeah, you're right. Just because it's always been done that way doesn't mean it's right.
That's right.
Okay, so the time has flown. We're already to our fun closeout round.
Okay.
And we did a little bit of this last time, but you did great. I'm going to bring up some fun tasks, and I want you to say which of your colleagues you think would be good at tackling those tasks.
Okay.
Or it could also be entertaining to watch them tackle those tasks, because maybe they're not good at it, but you tell us. The first one is going on a camping trip. Who would you like to go on a camping trip with, and why?
Now, is the question who I think would be well suited to go on a camping trip, or just who would I want to go on a camping trip with?
Can be either or both.
Okay. I'm thinking.
Technically, it's generally people answer for who would be best at it.
Who would be best at going on a camping trip? I would have to say, I'm thinking Councilmember Allen, Ward 6. He seems like he would be well-versed at pitching a tent and just hanging out. So yeah, I would go with Councilmember Allen.
Yeah, he gets a lot of votes. Councilmember Nadeau gets a lot of votes because Councilmember Allen was an Eagle Scout, and Councilmember Nadeau, I forget the technical term, but was a Girl Scout equivalent.
Got it. Yeah. I was an Eagle Scout, believe it or not, back in the day.
I did not know that.
Yeah, back in the day.
Awesome. I didn't realize we had 2 Eagle Scouts.
Yeah, but that's not surprising that he would get the most votes.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is, if you were on a phone call with customer support, 1-800 number, and they're giving you a raft of trouble. In addition to you being probably good at helping resolve that, who do you think could help you get the answer you wanted at a customer support?
Okay, I'm torn. So I would name two people if I can cheat and name two people. I would say Councilmember Pinto, because I think I've seen her under heat and pressure, and she has a good poker face where she could take the heat. So if someone's on a 1-800 call, if I'm understanding the question, I think she would be good at just, regardless of who's on the other end, kind of receiving that information. And then Councilmember Henderson is pretty good with research using data. And so finding an answer, she's pretty quick with like backing that answer up with the data and research. So I would throw both of them out.
Gotcha. How about whose Rolodex would you borrow? And it's been brought to my attention I shouldn't use Rolodex because I'm dating myself by using that. Whose contacts would you like to steal?
Well, that's easy. It's probably Mendelson, Chairman Mendelson, because he's been around since forever. He knows a lot of people know him. So that's an easy one. I would say Chairman Mendelson.
Gotcha. How about mediating a dispute? If you had a thorny dispute in the neighborhood, you're obviously going to be front and center, but who would you bring with you to try to get to resolution? By charm, by arm butt twisting, who would you want at your side?
That's an interesting one. I would say that's probably tied between Councilmember Robert White or Councilmember Matthew Fruman. They are pretty level-headed, pretty collegial individuals. If someone's going to flip the table, it's less likely that it's going to be either of them two doing it first. So I would go with either one of them.
Excellent. Okay, and the last question is, whose poetry would you like to read? If assume all, which I realize is a strong assumption, all of your council member colleagues write poetry secretly, whose poetry would you want to read and why?
Whose poetry? Yeah, that's a tough one.
Could be because it'd be hysterical. Could be because it'd be meaningful. You can take any angle you
I'm
want.
going to say Trayon White because I think that would be hysterical.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And is there anyone whose poetry you'd actively avoid?
Chairman Mendelson's.
Yeah, he gets that vote every time.
Yes,
he wins that every single time.
Yes.
Okay, well, we're out of time now. Thank you for indulging the fun round. And I just would say to our listeners, please remember to subscribe to our podcast on SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search under Hearing the Council. Thanks again for joining us, listeners. Tune in next time. We're on DC Radio at 96.3 on your FM HD4 dial or at dcradio.gov. I'm Josh Gibson. This is not a council hearing. This is Hearing the Council. Thanks again, council member. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Take care. Have a good day.